We do have a couple with us who weren't here last time. I'm going to do kind of a quick loop back to the beginning to make it all make sense, so pardon the redundancy for those of you who have already seen this. So active controls is primarily really a mounting system for you, but we've partnered with Stealth and Switch It and Movis and very possibly ASL, depending on how some things come down the line here. We do have the capacity, it's just a matter of the ability to work together that's being determined as we speak. But the whole concept of what we do is built around moving things closer to midline when we're talking about extremity driving. So the concept's been around forever. You guys have seen Gatling mounts bopping around for the last 30 years or so. My opinion, and you guys may agree or disagree, is the one problem that it does solve, which is getting to the right position, creates usually a couple new ones: instability, difficulty to get out of the way, and lack of a better upper extremity support system, for lack of a second point of support particularly. So what we've tried to do is develop a system that would get you to the same place with more stability, much better upper extremity support, and ease of connection and disconnection. So this is called a mast and socket system that we've developed. This has actually been granted a US patent. It's very unique in the fact that it not only is a mounting system and an upper extremity support, but it's an electronic interface as well. So the pins that are on the bottom here are actually where all of your logic and your power are handled by. So each one of these is rated to 27 amps. Not important other than the fact that nothing in a power chair ever sees more than 8. So over-engineered in that regard. They're also impervious to acidity and they're waterproof. So you could dump a bottle of water into here, or, not going to be real particular, we could dump a horrible bodily fluid of the day in there, and you could rinse it with hot water, a little bit of soap, and clean it out, and it's ready to go. So it's designed to handle moisture, wet, icky, awful stuff. Okay, so your connection is made by simply dropping in. So when we developed this mount, the mast and socket system, we realized there wasn't a lot of clinical data available, and I jokingly tell people that I found the end of the internet searching for clinical data to validate what is pretty obvious for most clinicians, that it makes more sense to do things here than it does to do them here. So we didn't find anything, but I met a really interesting guy. His name is Alberto Esquenazi. Dr. Esquenazi works at Moss Rehabilitation in Philadelphia, and he's the guy who did the clinical study for the Rewalk Exoskeleton. So he's pretty well known globally from a clinical study standpoint. And he took the project on. He was pretty excited about it. What he did was, in his gait lab, he used 3D kinesthetic modeling sensors, muscle stem measurements, and pressure mapping. And he had each subject drive through his high-speed photography gait lab. So we could do this dynamically, which was very important to us. And we measured first driving from an armrest-mounted input device, and then driving from midline. Same chair, same seating. And we measured body position, pressure distribution, a whole bunch of other things. So the findings, though not really surprising, were eye-opening in my opinion. By simply moving the input device to midline, posture improved, pressure distribution improved, proprioception improved dramatically. Your ability to orient in space has a lot to do with where you're inputting the device. Most importantly, on average, about 12 muscles were firing continuously when driving from an armrest, and that number dropped to an average of 4 driving in midline. So what we were able to extrapolate from that, and this is certainly our turn on it, but I think it makes logical sense, is not only can we help people to sit better and function better and drive better, but we can get them to do it for a longer period of time. So the clients who express difficulty with fatigue for relatively short periods of time in the chair, some of that can be attributed to accessing a position that frankly isn't a real easy one for a lot of people to get to. It's just how we've always done it. So my quick diatribe on how we've always done things is, I say in a court of law, my exhibit A would be 25 years ago or so when I started doing this, the rule of seating and positioning was 90 at the ankle, 90 at the knee, 90 at the waist, and that was the gospel. But none of us do that anymore, hopefully. We don't see sebaceous bars floating around all that often anymore. So things that we embraced as the way to do things, we can evolve. And we're of the opinion that this is another evolution, in really the same vein. Okay? So after establishing the position that we wanted to get to, we realized the other problem with the Gatling mounts was instability and lack of secondary support for the hand. So you're out in space. It's also a placement issue that comes into play. So you've got to clear the leg of the client. So you've got the bar, then you've got the bracket, then you've got the joystick, and you've got the handle. So now you're very quickly up in the air. It makes it very difficult to have any kind of control without upper extremity support. The analogy there would be when you write on a whiteboard, your penmanship usually suffers because you're not stabilizing your hand to perform a repetitive fine motor task. You need stability to do that. Same thing with driving a power chair. So, first mount I want to show you guys is what we call the Rejoy 360. My running joke, and some of you have already heard this, is we do not do well at naming products. It is not our forte. In our defense, all the cool stuff is already trademarked and copyrighted. There's nothing left. So, numbers are safe. But Rejoy, very loosely, was designed around the concept of redeployment of joystick. So, the Rejoy 360, the 360 part is because it has 360 degrees of adjustment. Okay? Now, this has 3 different lengths of arm available, 3-inch, 5-inch, 8-inch. So if you need to offset laterally, you can do it. If you need to get closer to a 16 wide, 22 deep, pencil thin client who needs it all the way back to their cord, you can get there as well. With bracketry and the different mounts that we have, you can get this thing pretty much anywhere that you want it. Now, this mount is capable of handling every standard joystick that you work with now. Lynx, Arnett, VR2, Dynamic Shark, Dynamic DX, QLogic 1, 2, and 3, NE Plus, anything out there. The only thing we're not able to work with is the Mark 5 and Mark 6 stuff that's already out there. It's a compatibility with connections issue that we've never been able to do. And I only mention that because I think this lends itself very effectively to retrofitting. Clients that you've worked with in the past who come back have progressed. What they had isn't necessarily working as well as it could for them. You want to look at other options. We aren't able to retrofit the Mark 5 and Mark 6 stuff, but anything else, we're good to go. In addition, this will also handle anything from Stealth, Switch It, Movis, and potentially ASL. So anything that you would use to drive via an extremity in a power chair can be mounted into this platform. Okay? So this is just a standard deflection joystick that we use. We call it an active joystick. And the active joystick is just like the same gimbal that's inside of an Arnett joystick. So it's just same movement, same deflection. The reason we use this in our mount is it does reduce the profile of the device a little bit. So you have somebody where it needs to be flatter than the thickness of the box of the full joystick. This is one way to do it. Other than that, we really use it for demos and for samples because they're generic. So I could take this off of this Permobile and put all this stuff right onto a Quantum that has an enhanced display and program it for proportional and it's ready to drive. Or to Lynx. It doesn't matter. So, other than that, we do get a lot of people who will call for this just for the reduced profile. Other than that, if it's everything else is even, the standard joystick that comes with the chair can be used in this position. So at that point, we're not introducing a new drive control. It's just a mount for the joystick that comes with the chair. You don't have to send it anywhere. It's 2 screws and a plug, and it's ready to go for you. Okay? So, to give you guys an idea. What's that?
How does it plug in?
Right there.
Yeah, I know. How does it plug into the standard joystick?
We have a harness that comes right out of the top of this cap that'll have, there's different harness kits.
Right.
One will have the 4 yellow Arnett pins, one will have the Lynx plug, we have the QLogic 1 and 2, QLogic 3, VR2, any joystick will have the harness kit for that. We also have a harness kit that has a DB9 connection, so any alternative drive control would plug in via DB9. Okay. All you have to do is specify what control you want. The beauty of this, in my opinion, is you take it out of the box ready to go. You don't have to worry about which connector you use and, oh, we got to pull from that other box and get this other piece. It comes out of the box like this. So once you mount the receiver, plug it into the chair, program it for proportional, you're ready to drive. So to compare and contrast, this is a Movis Micro in the same mount. Now, in my travels, I usually ask people what they guess. If they need to change a chair from a standard joystick to a micro input, how long it would normally take. And the running average that I'm getting is about 20 minutes. But what most clinicians tell me is it's usually the next appointment. If I need to change from one style of drive to another, if I don't know right in the very beginning of my 60-minute window, I'm probably doing it on the next visit. This system will allow me to transition from one to the other in 30 seconds without taking the client out of the chair. What it allows us to do, in our opinion, is instead of settling for adequate solutions, we can explore the minutia of this to find superior solutions. So to have the time to play around between different micro devices, which we normally don't have time to do, this allows us to do it more efficiently. The other cool thing about this is it improves the quality of your data, both the data that you capture with your eyes and the stuff you get feedback-wise from the client. If you try these things 30 seconds apart, your eyes are gonna tell you much more effectively which one was more functional, more effective, better. But your client's input, what they like better, what they feel more comfortable with, doing it 30 seconds apart, will radically improve as well. So there's two goals here: improve the efficacy of the assessment and then improve the efficacy of the provision. Speed is what changes the assessment part. Ability to duplicate is what improves the provision. So if I put this in for an ALS patient, for example, who today has the ability to use 10 grams of force on a micro joystick, in 6 months from now, where I normally would probably do that with a towel and a pool noodle and maybe some gum and duct tape and all that other stuff to get to that sweet spot. Then I go to issue, and my client says, I can't use this, and we all know it's because there's been a decline in their medical status because of the diagnosis inherently. But they can say, well, this isn't exactly what I tried. And they'd be right, frankly. But if I take a picture of what I trial and I duplicate that, there is no margin for error there any longer. So that defines for me that there's been a change in medical status for the client. You guys know why that's so important, a lot of people don't. That lets you get another bite of the funding apple. Change in medical status, you can go back for something new. But that's a real clear-cut way to show that there's been a change. So I think that's pretty important. Okay? So again, anything you want to drive via an extremity, switches, fiber optics, proximity, anything we can do into the 360 mount. Now mount number 2, stuff scattered all over here by the time we're done. It's polycarbonate trays. So, the highlights in my opinion of the tray are, number 1, we never touch the armrest. So if I want to adjust the angle or height independently of the height or the angle of the armrest, I can do it. I'm not clamping onto the armrest at all, so the added width that I normally associate is gone as well. The biggest thing from my standpoint is the fact that the tray with the drive control in it is untethered. So at transfer time, what caregivers usually do is they'll hang it from the wires off the back canes of the chair. I'm not an electrical engineer, that's bad. It's great for techs. It keeps techs really, really busy, but it's a lot of downtime for clients. The standard size tray, guys, is 16 wide, 12 deep. We can do any custom size that you like, but we can also locate the device anywhere in the tray that you like. So if you decided that your optimal operation point is 3 inches from the back edge and 4.5 inches from the right, we have a template on our website that you can print, mark it exactly where you want it, and we make it that way. So it's a custom because it takes a couple extra days, but it's a no-charge custom. So and when we talk extra days, I'm talking like 3 extra days. It's not weeks by any means. This will handle all the standard joysticks that we talked about, all the micro minis, everything we talked about from Stealth, Movis, and ASL, and Switch It. This is the micro pilot from Switch It that's in here right now. One of the neat things about this tray design is I have the ability to recess the device pretty far down into the tray, so you don't have to climb on top of it necessarily, especially with micro devices. I've done this where it's almost flush with the top of the tray, and I've actually had 2 different clients, one of them was in Philadelphia and one of them was in Nashville, who were C4s, I believe, don't hold me to that. No use of the hand whatsoever, but when the hand was placed on there, they had shoulder. And with shoulder movement, they actually created directional force, and they drove proportionally with that. I'm not saying to say that's going to happen all the time. It's going to be rare. But this was a case where that guy was thinking one complete different direction, and he ended up going in a totally different direction than what he thought he was going to be, and the clinician was in the same boat. So, I'm not saying it's for everybody, but because it's so easy and so fast, you can try stuff like that. That's where I think the coup is here. You can be more creative because you don't have to be doing what I'm doing right now, which is looking at the clock, making sure I don't burn time. Okay? So, this tray mounting it's a very European way of thinking. In Germany, 3 out of 4 power wheelchairs that are issued in Germany, the drive control is mounted in tray. And I don't know why, and I don't speak German, and they don't speak very good English, so we never got a real good answer on how or why, but that's how they do it. So this is a classic example for me of a device that's been out for years, that's had limited success, not because of the device at all, but because of how it's always been mounted. So this is the touch drive from Switch It. It's always been mounted off the end of an armrest on an angle. Now I would challenge all of you later when you have some free moments, take your cell phone and hold it on the end of your armrest of your desk chair. Try to send a text message. See how good you go. Spell check will not even help you. So performing that task that far away, you're not going to do very well with it. Where would you use your phone or your tablet? Exactly where James is holding his right now, right in his lap. It's your power zone. In ergonomics, this is where we function. So all we've done is embedded the touch drive into the tray. So there's no edge to climb over. So when you get to it, wherever you move your finger to is the direction the chair goes. I'm taking 0 credit for the functionality of the control. I didn't change a thing. I just put it in a better position for people to use it. So this has gone from being cool, but not very viable, to being cool and really viable for, full disclosure, most of the people that I've done with this have been Duchenne's kids, spinal muscular atrophy, things like that. But I have done a couple of quads who were splinted. One of them was in Vanderbilt. He was splinted just like this. And his middle fingers on both hands were a little bit lower. And they were trying to get him into a goalpost to call on that shoulder movement. And they couldn't rotate him out at all. And then when they put it here, he couldn't create a forward. It was a right, and it was a mess. But that knuckle would go right here, and he could use that finger and go everywhere he wanted. So I got to get a tour of the area where he showed me where he got shot on our initial assessment, which kind of a cool, awful thing at the same time. My focus was the fact that he felt comfortable enough to go out into the community on that day, his first tryout, even with somebody with him, to go out in the streets. So that was a big accomplishment to me, and I was really amazed by that. Clearly, again, guys, I'm not saying this is for everybody, but it opens up possibilities to make it more viable than it's been before. Okay? Making sure I'm not missing stuff. All right, so covered a bunch of extremity driving. You guys have any questions at this point?
How much time does it take to put the bottom part in?
For setup on a chair, I can do it. I'm pretty good at it. I'm kind of like a soldier with this M16. I'm probably about 8 minutes. The way we do it, I'm going to take a minute to cover that while it's fresh in our minds here. Metal plate, Velcro to the seat pan. Wires going up underneath, one zip tie underneath, into port one. That's it. So it usually takes longer to program a chair that hasn't been set up for alternative driving than it does to actually place the technology. With that plate, you can even do that. If you have somebody who comes in a mold or a really involved custom seating system and you wanted to trial active controls with them, but you wanted to use their chair, if they have the right electronics, tilt them, lift their legs, slide the pan in between the cushion and the seat pan, use their chair for the trial. I've done it. Had an ALS patient in Boston. She's a 1 transfer a day gal. Once she gets out of the chair, she doesn't go back until the next day. She was already in her chair when we got to her house, so we tilted her, slid the plate in, plugged into her Arnett system with an Omni, and within 15 minutes she was driving around the house. And she was one who had lost so much that she was kind of here, couldn't even get out to the armrest to get to the standard joystick, let alone use it. So we put the tray in with the micropilot. She got the great stability she needed. We rotated the arms in a little bit to trail them in. And she did perfectly with that engagement because that's all she could do. And she was using a tablet for communication, but she was typing on it. But she had the ability to go against gravity and lift off of it, which is why the touch drive wasn't viable, but a micro input was.
But you don't need that, you're just doing a regular joystick.
Regular joystick, you don't need the Omni. For me, the line of demarcation there is if the drive control has an on-off switch on it, standard joystick, Arnett, Q-Logic, whatever, you don't need the Omni. If it doesn't have a way to turn on and off from the device, you're always going to need the enhanced display. Okay?
Can you get rid of that? It's for train, like if they're doing lateral
Yes.
transfers and they can't.
Absolutely. It's a removable, height adjustable bracket. So there's just a thumb wheel on the side.
Say what, Dave? Can you get pads around that if somebody has adductor tone in there?
There's a couple things you can do. First and foremost, we don't have a standard pad because then I would get into the minutia of 1/4 to 1.5 thick, and I would be manufacturing a million different things. Here's a couple things that we can do. Number one, if you need mild control, somebody who just needs to know when they touch something that it's soft, somebody who has sensation, take a can koozie, cut the bottom off. Take a Georgia Bulldog can koozie or an Atlanta Falcon can koozie, slide it right down over the top.
That's a good idea. Georgia
This-
Gators. I mean, Florida Gators.
Or a Philadelphia Eagles can koozie. You can do that for mild control. It's probably not coincidental in an indictment of my colleagues. This is the same diameter as a beer can.
I was gonna
So
say, it
slide
looks like a
right
beer
on.
can.
Yep. if you need more aggressive
We don't know
help,
what you're talking about.
if you need more involved, you could use a Roho adapter pad, you could use an action gel sheet, something like that. But if I need really strong control, my opinion, and I'm in a room full of clinicians, I'm probably gonna hang myself, but in my opinion, this is not the spot that I wanna create control, I wanna create it more up here. I personally like the Stealth two-piece abductor that actually has independent pads that you can adjust angle-wise, so I can come out right past the width of this, so I don't create extra mass there for someone to tolerate, but you trail right around it. So depending on the need, and if you're doing that, you can tie that into this removable bracket. So it can all be one piece to come off all together, instead of trying to flip it down. Especially with center mounts, flip down becomes a 90 degree, becomes a rhino horn on the front of the chair. It makes the lateral transfer worse. So, okay. So, as far as extremity driving, we're gonna move on to basically from the shoulders up driving. One of the interesting things, you know, the European influence that we've had at Active Controls, and by that, it simply means I've been to Europe a lot, and it's not even cool anymore, I'm not even proud of it, it just is what it is. But one of the things about Europe that I found was, there are no head arrays there, there are not a lot of sip and puffs there, there are some of the craziest chin controls that you've ever seen in your life. And I've seen, in Portugal, I saw one, it looked like someone cut an Invacare tracer apart and used all that chrome tube to make this giant transformer arm that came in front, right here, so the guy couldn't even see where he was going. And, you know, this kind of movement, it was absolutely insane. But that's what they do. But I like the idea of retaining proportional driving when you can. So, what we've done is shrunk everything down. So this is the micropilot again from Switch with a unique custom knob that we've designed. We actually sell this to Sunrise now. The concerns that we had driving in this environment, I'm calling it a chin control, but in reality it's more, pardon my back guys, it's cleft of the chin, I'm trying to see this too. Cleft of the chin, bottom lip, could even be tongue either through the skin or right on the ball here. So there's a couple problems with the standard micropilot. Number one, plastic knob or a foam knob. Plastic gets slippery when it gets saliva on it. Foam gets disgusting when it gets saliva on it. So none of those were viable from our standpoint. So we went to a silicone ball. Silicone doesn't absorb bacteria or moisture. It retains a tactile capacity that when it gets wet that you don't get from plastic. But the cool part about it is instead of mounting it directly to a shaft because something micro, not only would it be susceptible to damage in the real world, tile floors, cobblestones, door cutouts, things like that, but you'd risk hurting the client, but you risk breaking the device at the same time. So the ball is mounted on a spring. So if I push too hard, can't break it. But what it does, the coolest part of the whole thing, and you guys have to watch from the back on this, I apologize, I'm gonna move my head. I'm gonna do this manual. I'm gonna simulate a really bumpy chair. I'm gonna drive towards you and I won't hit you, I promise. I hope not. What I want you guys to know is I'm gonna exaggerate the movement. Watch the speed of the chair. It's not gonna change, so I'm gonna come your way. So if you notice, dead straight, dead smooth. So I can take, for that really super high level client that ends up doing the lurching all the time, and then you have to come to a complete stop to be able to let everything stop moving, I'm calling this mechanical tremor damping. And I haven't gotten a trademark on that yet, so don't steal it. But mechanical tremor damping absorbs that energy. So anything past 10 grams, it's absorbed by the spring. And I've had a lot of people say, well, why don't I just go in and do tremor damping on the chair? The answer is you've desensitized the chair full time. I don't always want it to be desensitized. There's some times that I want it to be very reactive. So when I have to stop within an inch of something, I need that precision. I don't want to take it away. So I retain it in the electronics, but I accommodate the tremor damping mechanically here. So this can be sterilized, you can take it off, run it under the sink to clean it if you want. You can use an alcohol wipe on it. If you're using this in clinic, just use an alcohol wipe or what you're cleaning the mats with, just give it a wipe every single time and it'll be perfectly safe for the next client. But this is a game changer. This has helped so many people that I've met in my travels that had either been ruled out for power or people ready to give up. And I've gone in basically from the Boston to DC corridor. That's kind of my backyard. I call them all geographically desirable because where I live I can drive there in a couple hours. And there's so many of those guys and gals that have called me when they get that new injury. What are we going to do? this has been an absolute godsend. And that's really been the focus. New injury where there's some type of mechanical intervention holding the head still, whether it's a halo or a collar or both. And also for the end-stage ALS patients who can't move their head anymore, can't create the seal around a straw or generate an oral pressure, this can be an option for them because they can use their tongue, which is the last thing they lose. So,
Yeah, I could say that you could do sip and puff a lot easier than that. I know you don't like sip and puff, I know.
I don't dislike it.
But
And I brought a sip and puff. I have a new sip and
that,
puff.
yeah, that old bouncing thing is the latchet, you don't have to worry about it.
Well, here's the thing, with latch, you do have the movement, but you're still not proportionally driving. There's a precision level
Yours
and,
is kind of
and,
proportional. Stella's coming out with a proportional one.
Yeah.
It's pretty close.
I don't see it giving me the same reactivity that I can get out of
If
something
you're
like
bouncing that much, it's better than that. I mean, you know what I mean, if you got that little control,
Well, if I'm setting this up for a client and I tighten everything down rather than having it to show everybody, it doesn't bounce.
no,
It bounces
right,
around,
but if you're saying that's why you're doing it, because you,
I'm
you know what I
doing
mean,
it
like
because I don't
the
want
spring.
bloody lips and broken devices.
Right,
The
but-
other things, a byproduct that happen to come along.
But if you're, right, I know,
And listen,
I got you.
It's an option.
It's an option, I know, but I'm just,
I understand.
the other way's an option.
Philosophically, and you guys spurred me, the last time I was down here.
Inspired
that-
him. Inspired.
Both inspired and spurred.
Yeah,
You
I got
motivated me to have a sip and puff in our package, and I have it. And please take credit for it. It's because of you guys. Because I have clinics that I go to in my travels that I will see more aliens than I'll see sip and puffs. And it's, for me, I'm just being frank.
No, I know.
Last week I was in Seattle, and I was in Portland the week before, and I went to Rio, and I went to Harborview does some sip and puffs. University of Washington does 0 sip and puffs, ever. So, from a product line standpoint, I want to approach this as a system. I wanted to give every tool that you could possibly want. Some people will use this all the time and never use the sip and puff. You guys may use the sip and puff that I'm going to show you, that you're going to love, precursor. You may use that all the time. Personally, what I would do is I would try them both.
No, I got you, it kinda looks like a golf club though.
A little bit like a golf club. I go American Idol microphone personally.
I was wondering if there's a karaoke thing that
Yeah.
goes with it.
You know, it's early in the year, probably a quarter two kind of thing, but you never know.
Yeah.
So,
I got
So
you,
you've
no,
got people
it is
using
an
that
option, but.
in Washington and different
National
places.
Rehab, Kennedy Krieger, University of Maryland Rehab has done like a dozen of these. McGee has 2 of these in clinic, both Riverfront and at their Race Street location, because they bought 2 kits because this was in use so much that they had to get seconds. So, they've done a lot with them. Going up into Spalding, really the whole corridor, and it's just because it's my backyard. So I've spent more time there. Now, full disclosure, there's some things it doesn't do, other than the obvious fact that it doesn't turn into a sip and puff as well. But it doesn't do recline well. It doesn't work with open seat to back angles as well, because it's not gonna move with you. Rear mounted, swing away from meals and conversations, but solves the number 2 problem for damage for this type of drive control after patient lift snapping it off. And that is, caregiver takes it off and lets it hang from the wires off the back of the chair. It is absolutely rampant, with head array as well. The wires get twisted once or twice, they put it back on, within a month, you've ripped all the wires out of the device. So all it is making whatever device you're using untethered. It also gives you precision of placement, it goes to the same spot every single time. So if my caregiver puts my client into the chair wrong, and instead of saying, well, clearly I need to reposition them because the mini joystick is hitting them in the forehead, a lot of them say, I have Allen wrenches, I can fix that. So then they call you when nothing works anymore, and they come back in like this, and you're trying to figure out how they got there. It's usually caregivers. So I can't guarantee that this is always going to work because it requires compliance. It's a whole different ballgame. We don't have time for that today. But it's at least a cue to give somebody something to look at with consistency of position. Okay? Yeah. The mounting system also, I've been told by a lot of people that I'm anti-head array. I'm not. I am anti going straight from a standard joystick to a head array. I think there's a lot of awesome stuff in the middle that gets overlooked, including Sip and Puff and not even trialed, but it's been marketed very well. That being said, same mounting system can work with head array. Whether it's Stealth or Switch It or ASL, doesn't matter. Any head array you want to use can go into this platform. Now, last medium for chin driving is Stealth harness. Now, real quickly before I go past this, when I showed you the swing away mount and the headrest, I can still do the Switch It Micropilot on that mount. It doesn't have to be a Stealth control, it can be any input device that you want. And that works the same for what I'm about to show you. So the harness is a Stealth product, and right now I have a PMPJ on there. But I could just as easily put the silicone ball Micropilot onto this mount as well. So you can interface. What we've done is we've taken the Stealth product and made it compatible to handle Switch It stuff. And they were never going to do that, but we did. So, it's again, I look at this like ordering from a Chinese takeout menu. You pick what kind of rice you want, you pick chicken, beef, whatever, what kind of sauce. It's really that simple. You pick the mount, you pick the device you want in it, you're done. Okay? Now this device, from the moment that they all finished up with the design, the one complaint everybody said was, we don't think hanging this off the back cane is an acceptable answer for storage when the client's not in the chair. So all we didn't change the functionality or the fit or the sizing or anything at all. All I did was I put a handle on the end, so if I could put the socket on the chair anywhere, front, rear, side, underneath, in the back, doesn't matter. I'm using the front obviously because that's what I have on right now. This is my connection. So this will allow me to put this onto the client while they're in bed, transfer them in, make my connection, and then do the reverse. Disconnect, take them to bed, and make the transfer of the device. But it also allows me, and this is another phenomenon in the Northeast, I have a lot of kids who are driving this way and drive really well, and they use this for environmental controls, and they do well with the Bluetooth on the chair. But a lot of these inner city kids, there's not funding for a second method of access when they go to bed. And most of what I'm showing you today, frankly, is stuff that I've seen that has either made my light bulb go off or broken my heart and said, we gotta find a way to do this. I met this one little guy in DC, great with his chair, drove with this flawlessly. Could get in through his Bluetooth and his menu in his chair and do everything. His caregiver put him to bed at 7:30, and he had no other interaction from that point on, because there was no funding for another source. So I could conceivably set up a profile in my chair that is Bluetooth only, no driving, and use this from bed. Accessing everything via the method I'm already using, which is through the chair. Not for everyone, but when there's not a funding source for a second method of access, or there's not a cognitive capacity to learn a second method of access, this can be an option, and it's a lesser expensive option. When funding gets crazy with all that stuff, this is something you could go to. Wrap myself up in this thing.
How is funding for just that, right?
How's funding for
mount?
it?
Yeah.
It is KO108 because it is an electronic interface upper extremity support drive control method. It doesn't fit 3 codes, so PDAC in their infinite wisdom has said KO108.
How do they justify it? Say, well, you're justifying either the chin drive, head array, or 7-pot?
Yep,
Or you just have to justify it a different way since it's a different mount?
when we're talking about extremity driving, you're gonna talk about the different position that you've achieved, the stability you've achieved, and the level of upper extremity support you achieve from it. When we're talking about chin driving, the chin driving is so unique, you're gonna really be saying that it's an access more than anything else, getting to a spot that you can't get to with anything else. With head array, I think head array is gonna be frankly a little bit tough to fund because I'm not changing the functionality of head array, and I know that's not a big issue for you guys, but by mounting this way, I'm not changing its functionality at all. It works exactly the same way. Now, for certain insurances, if I get Medicare out of the equation, you know, I mentioned the guy that's damaged a bunch of head arrays already. This is up in Grand Rapids, Michigan, at Mary Free Bed. Now, Michigan has great no-fault insurance. So this guy's already destroyed 6 head arrays in 2 years. He didn't, caregivers did. So they bought him this because this is gonna save them, if they use the same math, $25,000 over the next 2 years by not having to buy 6 more head arrays for him. So there's a ability to be proactive that comes into it. So, but the head array, where you're not changing the functionality of the device, that will be a challenge to fund. I'm not, especially with Medicare.
So, if you did a Micropilot You're building for the micropilot.
You can do the E2312 for the micropilot, and then the K108 for the mounting system.
All right.
Yep.
So you're just buying the mounting system for location and ability to access the input device.
And to be able to say, in my controlled clinical trial, this worked better than that. That one was superior to the other with function of the client. I pressure map a lot now, more than I ever did, because I can show a mapping difference by changing location of drive controls.
And your K108 is listed as one
Yeah, it's one part number.
one part
for
number versus,
K108.
so for Medicaid, I know that's important for
K, you
Medicaid.
up to 6 down here, I believe it is. K108's on a claim.
Isn't that true, Robin, for your kids? So that's important, I know, for Medicaid.
Used to say they counted the laterals, the thigh supports.
And that's why the K108 code has garnered so much scrutiny, is people have thrown 25 things into submissions where they've just tried to nickel and dime for nuts and bolts, basically. So they're saying, okay, if you're gonna hammer us for all this stuff, we're gonna take a really good hard look at it. So, will this get extra scrutiny? Absolutely, no question about it. Are they gonna look at it twice? Will they come back and probably ask you for more information? Probably not on a letter that comes from here, but if we're coming from a less thorough environment, probably. That's been the running theme in my job.
So you get them covered as
Yeah,
K108.
absolutely.
And
Yeah, they're being-
Medicare?
Medicare's covered in too. I have not had any issue. I've had the occasional issue where it got kicked back and they had to reset and submit more information. But my thing is, and this is the way I really frankly approach the whole thing, if New Motion and NSM are not getting paid for these devices, they are calling me and screaming from the rooftops that we're not getting paid for your devices. And they're not. That's all I can do. So this stuff's been around for a while. You've seen all this stuff, but are you excited?
Yes.
This is a drum roll. Dun, 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 dun.
Ta-da! So here was the thinking behind this. Tear this apart if you like. I wanted to do something where the display was more midline so people could see it more easily. I can adjust the height and pitch and all that stuff of the display, mount it in different positions. I wanted something that I could completely take off. So if I want to clean it, I can actually take it off and walk to the sink and clean it. Cleaning my saliva tract, cleaning out my straw, whatever I want to do. Run it under hot water to just get the last bit of green stuff off of there. It'd be gross, but you guys know the deal. So, gets it to the front position, quick disconnect. What will be next will be something that will be offset and able to be removed as well. But this gives me the ability to introduce the display in that front position that I can't any other way. And what I've been asking in my travels the last few weeks is, Harborview specifically, I said, what do you guys think about display in the front versus display to the side? I said, we like that idea because that turning of the head, for some clients they can't, and they don't have the ability to look peripherally to the side like that, so they can see what's going on. We're not locked into it, but this will be one version that will be available. When I do this where it's not necessarily for RNet, when I use the Stealth pneumatic switch reader and the iDrive processor, then I can leave the display on the RMS if you want. It will be preference at that point. It's not obligatory. But I wanted something that would eliminate all the tubes and wires that every chair I see with the Sip and Puff, even if it doesn't start that way,
That's a lot better, dude.
a lot of stuff. It's just
Things
a lot
about
of
that
stuff.
long, you gotta run all that tube all over the place where they're pinching it and stuff. I like that a lot better.
I've also had a lot of people tell me that even though everybody denies this from a manufacturing standpoint, that a reduction in the length of the tube
Makes a big
reduces
difference.
resistance.
Yes.
So, you know, everybody who makes these say, no, 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 it's all the same. I don't buy that. So we can make this extremely short, obviously, because it's only traveling a very short distance. It can be shorter than it is now by half. So, easy to access saliva trap when you want to change it. Take the whole thing off, don't do it on the chair. Get it out of the way while you're working on it, drop it back in.
Oh, is it change that whole tube, like the whole clear tube?
This tube? Oh, the clear
You
tube?
just clamp down.
It's just
It's just a
It's just
stealth.
right there.
clip and clip, yeah, it's into the nipple on the bottom of the display. The Omni has the built-in pneumatic switch
Yeah.
into it, so I don't
Okay.
need a mechanism. If I'm using
Yeah.
the Stealth one, so if I'm gonna do a Q-Logic chair, I would have the Stealth Sip and Puff, iDrive processor, and then I'd be plugging into the display from that. But that would allow me, if I choose to move this here and keep it on the chair without a pneumatic connection. It would just be a DB9 connection.
That is cleaner than any other. That dude,
Can
that's
you
clean.
Thank you.
Easy.
see,
And
aren't
also, I
you,
think that the saliva trap, I mean, you might want to cover it because it can get gross looking, but is more visible to be checked regularly and not become an issue.
And that's the thing, I was, and again, I'm in my little lab trying to balance this stuff out. I'm thinking, if I'm the user and I have it that way, I can see
Right.
Right.
if something's going on.
Uh-huh.
And yeah, they get gross, but I'd rather see that it's
I
getting
agree.
gross than
Right.
not be able to see that it's
Right,
getting
and
gross.
change it before it's a problem.
Exactly. Be reactive instead of waiting for something bad to happen.
If you use the stealth one with the iDrive processor, is that, could you mount it there also, or would it have to be on the side? Like, would
I
it
can
be?
mount it all there. What we would do is we have basically just a sleeve that would cover everything
Okay,
on the mount. So
it'd be a
all
little
of
bit-
it would be mounted onto here.
okay.
iDrive processor on one side, pneumatic switch on the other. Probably iDrive processor on the back, pneumatic switch on the front, so you can access it more easily. And then the final version will have a clamp to hold the display mount instead of this, so you can actually telescope it up and down the rod. If you want it lower or higher, you'll be able to put it where you want it.
Okay.
Just a question. For the stuff that comes up front that long, like the
Mhm.
chin drive and stuff, does anybody have it? You know, people say they don't like the straw coming here.
Well, that's my initial thought is
Do people
some
have
people that don't
something
want
with
that in front of them.
Pole coming right up in front of them like that?
Well,
I mean, that's my initial
There-
thought, just
there will
from,
be
from
some-
people, their personal preference.
Right, I'm just wondering.
there will be some who don't. What I get most often from the marketplace is people hate things in their periphery. But if I set this up properly and I move this, for example, down to the bottom and I lower this a bit more, which I can, it's not in my line of sight. I have
It's
to look
just
down
round
to
up
see.
his chest.
It can
No,
come
that's
straight
straw.
up.
Right.
Exactly.
Plus, I think they
Sure,
like the
maybe
display in
different
the
ones.
middle like that. That's always a thing, trying to get a display where, you know,
Well, they
you
can
get
see it, right.
Yeah.
A
So-
3 or 2 or 3, they're always trying to.
Especially
rush
for those
up.
guys that don't have neck range at
Yeah,
all.
that's great.
You can't look down.
Oh, I agree, I was just saying, I didn't know.
Yeah, I know.
There will be some that don't
Right.
want it in front
And
of them,
that's
and then you just
okay.
put it on this, right, just have a
Here's the
preference,
beauty
right?
of this, guys. All this stuff that I'm showing you, I'm not reaching into your toolbox and taking one thing out. Everything you've ever had at your fingertips to
Right.
use, it's still there.
Right,
You get more tools. More tools means more chance for success.
No, but it does make it clear not having things hang all over the place, though.
That's always been
Get
my
tied
goal
up
and
and
intention.
throw
Every
something.
chair that I see
Yeah.
out there with a sip and puff on it has so much stuff.
Yeah.
And it's usually laterally mounted and it's very susceptible to getting damaged. And that's what I wanted to clean up.
Well, 75% of service calls are for basically bad, communication cables. That should take a ton of all those cables not being pants and zip tied.
Absolutely.
Well, and it helps because it's in the front and it's not on the back of the chair where you got your laterals and chest straps and everything else that you gotta have on there to keep them
And
sitting up
backpacks
straight.
and
I mean,
all
like,
that.
Your ventilator
So you
and
can-
all that.
it is,
That's not-
that's one thing you get off the back and get out of the way,
And
right?
that's the question too, is that the same code under what the swing waist stealth
Yeah.
hardware would be on a headrest?
Well, it's still gonna have the active controls component, so it's gonna be KO and it's gonna be bundled internally.
So it's all gonna be bundled together?
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, this is, I mean, from a mounting standpoint, if you've got for the pneumatic switch,
Well,
that's separate, but for the mount itself, that's gonna be KO. So you're gonna have two line items, the switch itself and the,
so it'd be just like, we have to mount it somewhere anyway.
Right.
So it'd be
you're gonna have to mount,
Yeah.
this is the mount that we've
Hardware's
selected.
hardware, it's the same code.
Okay.
So, the last thing, the last new thing to show you guys today, did you kindly?
Two new things.
Yes,
I mean, maybe.
I did.
'cause
No, I
wanted
was
you
just
to-
asking about the poles.
I wanted you to be happy today.
I am.
I mean, the only
That's
people that
not
don't
gonna
like
happen.
it is people that
Happier.
want
Uh-uh.
I mean,
She's
that's
You
had a
already
rough
said that.
morning.
They're gonna wanna have. I know.
It all started early.
Right, yeah.
Early.
Yeah.
You got two new things.
Yeah, this is the last thing I'll show you. I'm very excited
I
about
don't like
this.
to wait for the next period, just snapping it in there.
You guys, again, I apologize for blocking your view on this.
Well, they're just lazy, not coming, they're good.
So, we've had some people who morbidly obese, their knees touch, they can't tolerate anything in the middle. Very violently